Hello and welcome to an exciting new episode of Talking About Stoicism. He said, taking a sip. We're going over the Moral Letters by Lucius Annaeus Seneca. We've landed in letter 52, and I would like to read you just the first section, first paragraph. From Seneca to Lucilius, greetings. What is it, Lucilius, that pulls us in the opposite direction from where we aim to go? That forces us back toward the very place we want to get away from? What is it that wrestles with our minds and doesn't allow us to want anything once and for all? We vacillate between different plans. There is nothing we want freely and unconditionally and for always. To make no determination, you say, to have no lasting preference, that is folly. But how are we to tear ourselves away from that folly? And when? No one is strong enough to swim on his own to safety. Someone has to extend a hand. Someone has to give a pull. It's an interesting, it's a long letter. That's why I wanted to stick to this. But I think it's an interesting thing to think about. What makes us go in one direction while that's the opposite direction from where we want to go? And I'm not sure how much exactly there is to say about this, but I thought I would give it a shot anyway. I think the simplest way to answer that question is to frankly say, because some things are easier than other things. Some paths are easier than other paths. It can be a lot easier to pick the simple way out simply because it is simple. I tried to put the word simple as many times in that sentence as I could, and I managed to do it 3 times. Some things are easier. It's easier for us to go into specific directions, to take specific ways out, right? And those things are easy for us. It's sometimes easier to lie about something than to actually tell the truth. It can be easier to quickly go through the drive-through and get a greasy meal than to actually cook something. It can be easier to take shortcuts at work than to actually put in the effort and the hours, etc. And I think this is human nature. I think this is something that is reflected in the way we have evolved. When you look at the principle of evolution from the viewpoint of survival of the fittest, remember what that truly means. Fittest does not mean strongest in that context. Fittest means those that fit best in their environment, that have adapted best to the environment they live in. And evolution works on a principle that states that all you need to be is good enough. You don't need to be perfect. There are very few perfect creatures out there, if there are any, right? Human beings certainly are not perfect. So that principle of being good enough, that's kind of how we have evolved, right? We have evolved to be good enough. We're just good enough to do what we need to do. We can breathe and eat and drink. We can do all these things. We have developed a certain brain that allows us to do certain things, but it allows us to do things well enough. Not perfectly. And this might be a somewhat far-fetched analogy, but I had to think of that, right? And in the same way in life, we tend to do things in a way that is good enough. And it's very easy to say, I can spend 3 hours on this and do this perfectly, or I can spend 1 hour on this and what I will have produced will be good enough. But by continuously doing that, by continuously taking that approach, you are always doing the bare minimum, doing what is required for you to manage that task. So that, I think, is the simplest answer to Seneca's question. Why do we get pulled in one direction, even if that is the opposite direction from where we want to go? Probably because that specific direction we're being pulled towards, is simply the easier of 2 options, and such is human nature. That is where we will go. Now, I've said this in the past in other videos in this series. If we approach this from a viewpoint of Stoicism is very hard. Stoicism is not a school of philosophy that says the bare minimum is good enough. Stoicism instead is a school of philosophy that says you need to work very hard. You need to continuously work on improving yourself. You need to continuously try to do the right thing. You will not always succeed at that. Sometimes you will fail. Sometimes you will not do the right thing. Sometimes you will lose your temper. But on the whole, you then need to learn from that so that next time you can try to avoid making that mistake. And that's very hard. It's a harsh philosophy, and it's a difficult philosophy to put into practice all the time. There are no shortcuts. There is no shortcut to virtue. You do the right thing or you do the wrong thing, but it can't be both, right? And there may be certain gray areas, but a gray area is not the virtuous thing. It is a gray area. So I think trying to be continuously mindful of that, of knowing that there is this continuous seductive allure of the easier path, the easy way to do something, the less involved way to do something, the sleeker way, the simpler way, etc. That is always there. That option is always there. And the trick, if you wish to practice Stoicism, the trick is to try and make an effort to do the right thing, even though that will be difficult, because it is difficult. It is difficult to do the right thing all the time. I think it's almost impossible. But you should at the very least strive to do the right thing most of the time, right? And even that is difficult. It's hard, and you'll be pulled in a specific direction, right? And you have to try to push back against that. Not do that thing, but do the actual proper thing, the right thing, the correct thing. Very hard. Hard philosophy. However, the more you do it, the easier it does tend to become, I find. But again, it's substantial effort that is required. I feel that anything else I will say about this will just cause me to repeat myself. So I will end this video here. Let me know what you think about being pulled in specific directions and maybe what you can do about it and how you handle that. It's always interesting to read. I hope this was useful. I will see you again next week for more talk about Stoicism. See you then. Bye.